It's funny how, like, a simple childhood story like Little Red Riding Hood
Hmm.
can still make us kind of raise an eyebrow as adults.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, sending a kid alone through the woods,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Knowing that there are wolves out there, that's just setting off some serious alarm bells for me.
Yeah.
Like, in my book, that's just not good.
It's a question that jumps out at you.
Maybe we should dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, the parental choices that seem, well, let's just say questionable.
Yeah, definitely questionable, especially when we read these stories with like our modern sensibilities.
Right.
We have two main versions to look at, Perrault's original and the Grimm brothers adaptation, and both tackle this idea of like danger and childhood, but with fascinatingly different approaches.
Yeah, so let's start with, like, Perrault, like the OG Little Red Riding
Well,
Hood.
the original.
Now, I gotta admit, when I reread it, I was struck by how the mom does warn Red to stay on the path.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to miss that detail amidst all the wolf drama.
It's subtle, but crucial. You know, that one instruction reveals a lot about the world these characters inhabit.
Yeah.
Like, woods weren't just a pretty backdrop, they were genuinely dangerous places.
Right, right.
Sending Red alone implies it was somewhat normal then, but the warning shows the mom isn't completely oblivious to the risks.
Okay. But then she sends her anyway.
Right.
And wouldn't you know, Red gets totally sidetracked.
Of course.
Perrault even says she's diverting herself and gathering nuts, running after butterflies.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like a kid on a nature field trip gone wrong.
Exactly. And that feeds into one of Perrault's big themes,
Uh-huh.
the dangers of naivete.
Right.
Red isn't being willfully disobedient. She's just easily distracted.
Yeah.
Perrault's world was full of trickery, so this resonated.
Yeah.
Looks can be deceiving, whether it's a charming wolf or a shady merchant in the marketplace.
Oh, absolutely. And talk about consequences.
Yeah,
Perrault's ending is dark.
it is.
Both Red and Grandma are wolf snacks.
Yeah.
No huntsman rescue in sight. Pretty bleak way to drive home the listen to your mom lesson.
Right, and it's important to remember this was written centuries ago.
Right.
Life was harsher, childhood mortality was higher.
Oh, for sure.
The story might seem brutal now, but back then it was a reflection of a world where bad things did happen even to kids if they weren't careful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All right, so let's fast forward a bit to the Grimm brothers.
Okay.
Their Little Red Riding Hood feels almost like a Disney remix.
It does.
Like a little brighter, a bit more hope sprinkled in.
Exactly. Even the mom's instructions get an upgrade.
Yeah.
No longer just stay on the path. Now it's a whole list.
Uh-huh.
Don't run. Be polite. Stick to the route. Almost like parenting advice had gotten more hands-on over time.
But the wolf still tricks her.
He does.
So this time, the Grimms add that Red sees these beautiful flowers,
Right.
tempting her off the path, almost like her curiosity. That natural childlike wonder is what leads to trouble.
And that's a subtle shift in focus. It's less about disobedience and more about the allure of the unknown.
Right.
The pull of something beautiful that leads you astray. A theme that still resonates today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We all know those shiny objects that can lead us off track.
Right.
But thankfully, the Grimms give us the huntsman.
Yes.
I gotta admit, I always cheer when he shows up, even though it kind of breaks the tension.
Right.
But-
He's the embodiment of rescue,
Yeah.
and that's classic Grimm style.
Yeah.
They often softened older, darker tales,
Mhm.
maybe reflecting a changing audience or just their own preference for a bit more optimism.
Okay, so Red's safe, happy ending, achieved.
Right.
Except the Grimms throw in a second wolf encounter.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Right, and this is where it gets interesting. Red isn't just saved. She's given a second chance to apply what she's learned.
Right.
This time, she remembers the warnings avoids the wolf and proves that she's grown from the experience.
Yeah.
It's a powerful message, even tucked into a fairy tale.
So two very different versions, but both seem to dance around this idea of kids navigating a world that's both alluring and dangerous.
It is.
And of course, it makes us wonder how much responsibility falls on the parents in all this.
That's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much freedom do we give children to explore knowing there are risks?
Right.
Is it reckless to send them out alone, or is that part of how they learn and grow?
Yeah, it's not a simple good parent, bad parent equation.
No.
There are layers here, historical context, societal norms, and the idea that maybe, just maybe, those risky situations are what shape Red Riding Hood into the character she ultimately becomes.
And that's a good point. Makes you wonder, doesn't it, if these stories were written today, what would the woods be?
Ooh.
The internet.
Okay, yeah.
Social media.
Places where kids can wander both physically and virtually,
Yes.
encounter those metaphorical wolves.
Exactly. And those modern-day wolves, they're trickier than ever.
Oh.
Not always big and bad. Sometimes they're disguised as trends, peer pressure, even those perfect lives we see online.
It's a whole new level of navigating appearances for sure.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the listener's point about those moms sending their kids off alone.
Yeah.
It feels almost unthinkable now, right?
Yeah.
We've become so risk-averse, especially when it comes to our kids.
Well, yeah. I mean, I catch myself doing it too, hovering over explaining,
I know, me too.
wanting to bubble wrap them from
Yeah.
every little thing. But then I wonder, are we doing them a disservice
Mm-hmm.
by shielding them from all challenges?
It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
Back when these stories originated, childhood wasn't quite the protected bubble it is now.
Right.
Kids were expected to contribute, to have responsibilities, even to face certain dangers as part of growing up.
So maybe judging those moms through a 21st century lens isn't quite fair.
I agree.
It's like comparing apples and oranges, or maybe Red Delicious and those weird GMO apples they have now.
Right.
Like the whole context is different.
It is. It's more about understanding the norms of the time. Sending Red on that errand, it wasn't just a plot device. It reflected how children were integrated into the adult world much earlier.
Right.
They weren't always sheltered, and the stories reflect that.
But even knowing all that, there's still this underlying anxiety, right? That parental fear for our kids' safety. It's hardwired.
It is, absolutely, and it goes beyond just physical safety.
Yeah.
It's about wanting to protect them from emotional hurt, from making bad choices, from those wolves that can scar them, even if there's no physical bite.
Right. It's less about judging those moms and more about recognizing that universal parental dilemma.
I agree.
Wanting to protect your kids, but also knowing they have to learn to explore,
Hmm.
to sometimes make mistakes.
Right, and maybe that's the brilliance of Little Red Riding Hood.
Hmm.
It's not offering easy answers. It's holding up a mirror to that constant tension between sheltering and letting go.
Right.
And that's something every generation grapples with, whether the woods are literal or metaphorical.
It's interesting how those two versions offer like such different takes on the consequences of Red's actions. Perot's ending is like a straight-up PSA.
Right.
Don't stray from the path, kids, or the wolf wins.
It's stark, isn't it? There's a real sense of finality in Perot's version.
Yeah.
Red and Grandma are gone, and the lesson is hammered home with no room for interpretation.
Yeah, like a cautionary tale ripped from the headlines of that time.
Exactly.
Whereas the Grimms, with their huntsman rescue and second chance encounter,
Right.
it's almost like they're saying, okay, you messed up, but you can learn from it.
Exactly. It's a more nuanced approach.
Yeah.
Suggesting that childhood isn't just about avoiding danger, it's also about developing resilience, learning to recognize those wolves in sheep's clothing and making better choices next time.
So maybe the Grimms were a little softer on Red, a little more forgiving.
Maybe.
Or maybe it reflects a shift in how we view childhood itself.
That's a good point.
Like it's okay to stumble as long as you get back up and keep going.
That's a fascinating thought, and it makes you wonder if those different endings weren't just about plot, but about reflecting evolving societal attitudes towards children and their capacity for growth.
Well, let's circle back to that initial question that sparked this whole deep dive.
Okay.
Were those moms bad parents for sending Red off alone?
It's easy to jump to conclusions, especially when we're looking back through centuries of changing parenting norms.
Right.
But maybe the more interesting question is, what were those authors trying to tell us about the world Red was navigating?
Right. It's not about labeling those moms as good or bad.
You're right.
It's about understanding that their choices, even if they seem questionable to us now,
Yeah.
were part of a larger context.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, that bad parenting was a deliberate literary device.
Okay.
A way to create tension, to highlight the dangers Red faces, and ultimately to make her journey, her choices, all the more impactful.
So it's less about judging those moms and more about recognizing the power of storytelling. How even a simple fairy tale can spark these complex conversations about childhood risk and the ever-present wolves lurking in the shadows.
And that's the beauty of these stories, isn't it? They continue to resonate, to challenge us, to make us think differently about our own world, even centuries later.
So, dear listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Maybe next time you read Little Red Riding Hood, you'll see those woods, those wolves, and even those parental decisions in a whole new light. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those thinking caps on.
Thank you for joining CMF Conspiracies podcast. What do you think about the topic we covered today? Comment below with your thoughts on this subject. If you have a conspiracy you wish for us to deep dive into, please send your topic to our email address or leave it in the comments. Thank you again for watching. Like and subscribe for more content like this.